Hey everyone, if you pay attention to the media, which most of you probably do, you'll realize that Marvel just released Ant-Man and the Wasp, the probably highly anticipated sequel to the generally pretty profitable and well-received film Ant-Man, directed by Peyton Reed. Following the somewhat critical success that was Age of Ultron, Ant-Man was kind of Marvel's palate cleanser that allowed a more smaller story with a more goofy character to take center stage while people got over what was kind of the lameness of Age of Ultron. Well, Marvel's done it again, but kind of differently. Infinity War came out, and we were all blown away by how humongous and, amazing it was. And Marvel said, listen, you're all going to be really sad about all those characters who died. I probably can name them, but I'm sure there's someone watching who hasn't seen the movie yet. What we need after this is a genuine comedy that's more small scale, and you know the perfect character to bring us that is? Yeah, if you guessed it, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp. Let's start with pros. Well, the best pro of the movie is probably the cast. Marvel continues to do what it does best and cast amazing actors to portray their characters. If you really enjoyed Paul Rudd in Ant-Man and you liked his kind of goofy, everyday man con of Scott Lang, who got redeemed kind of in that movie, you will really, really love Ant-Man and the Wasp's take on Scott Lang. Rudd is both charming and goofy and funny while still being able to pull off the heartfelt, tender father-daughter moments that people really liked. Scott is a character that is unlike any other Marvel character. He's boots on the ground. He's a normal person. He's not a god. He's not a billionaire. He's not a king. He's one of us. So he has to deal with normal people problems, and that involves being the father and having to deal with a stepfather. He has an ankle bracelet because he went and fought someone in Germany without the permission of the U.S. government. You know, everyone deals with that. Scott goes through some depth. He's torn between helping people who have gotten through a hard time, but also trying to stay his last 3 days totally clean so he can be with his family. It's an understandable conflict. Teaming up with Scott, you have Hope Van Dyne, played by Evangeline Lilly. Hope is relatively the same from last movie, but she's still the same great character. She's tough, she's no nonsense, and she works well with Scott, who's overly goofy and very silly in some ways. So Hope, who now has her own suit, is going out and she's kicking ass and taking names. Hope is very different than Scott, but they still have something that ties them together, and that's the importance of family. You also have the return of supporting characters, such as Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, who gets to play his character from Ant-Man as this scientist who's been through a lot. He was the past Ant-Man, so he knows the mistakes Scott can make. As well as he's trying to get his wife back, which is a relatable thing for a lot of people. Family is really what is the center focus of this story. And Michael Douglas plays Hank with a lot of some quick wit, but also a lot of stoic seriousness. And unlike the first Ant-Man, he doesn't just speak science mumbo-jumbo. He has, some other lines. Also, you have Scott's old crew, and they're back. You have Michael Pena, who's playing Luis, and he's funny, he's fast-talking, he has all these great lines, and he also gets more in on the action than he did last movie. It ups the stakes for every character. As well as you have the other guy whose name I can't remember, and then you have the Russian guy. I don't know their names. They probably have them, but you don't know them by the names. You know them by, how they act. And the Russian guy, who's from The Flash, and Gotham, and The Dark Knight, and Blade Runner 2049, he does the thing where he goes in and he steals the show as a very, no-name actor. So, the cast is very solid. Bill Foster is played by Lawrence Fishburne, and he's pretty solid. There's some twists and turns with his character, as well as the actress who plays the ghost, whose name I can't remember for the life of me, brings some interesting empathy to this character. There's some side characters and some, one-off people who are, okay, but they're not super memorable. The plot's very interesting. Infinity War was a wide-scale story, with characters from every level of the Marvel Universe finally getting together. Unless you're on Netflix, then you weren't invited. Ant-Man and the Wasp is very different. It's very small scale, no pun intended. But instead of a wide, massive, cataclysmic event, it's about something very simple. It's about people trying to get a lab from each other, and who has it, who doesn't, chases trying to get it, fights trying to get it, but an overall message of trying to get something that's lost. The universe isn't in danger. Heck, San Francisco's not really in danger. Unlike something like an Avengers movie or even Cap 3, Ant-Man scales it down to a personal level. It's not about a big event, it's about the people in the event, and I really like that. As much as I love Infinity War, it's still an event. It's hard to like get individual characters in it. Because while everyone's there, not everyone's getting as much depth. It's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, and both characters get enough time to be understandable and relatable to the audience. It's not like Ant-Man overshadows the Wasp, or the Wasp overshadows Ant-Man. They're a team, and that's really interesting. As well as the action is phenomenal. As much as I love Captain America or Iron Man, there's not much change of pace of how they shoot a scene. Ant-Man is very different. With the whole size growing and shrinking, it's a fantastic way. They have car chases with things growing and shrinking, and it changes how the camera perceives what you're looking at, and it looks really interesting. It's something we don't see a lot in the Marvel Universe. This and Doctor Strange change how we view action for superhero movies. This is by far one of the funniest Marvel movies to date. And it follows the good strategy of what makes a comedy funny. There are no throwaway lines. Things are said in the beginning that are very funny and they come back. They repeat them, but not to be annoying, but to have a running gag. There's all sorts of comedy. There's physical comedy. There's in-background comedy. Paul Rudd nails all of it. From his facial expressions to just the fact that he jumps into a van at one point. And it doesn't sound funny saying it, but watching it is really good. While the film is very excellent, it does have some very Marvel problems. There are a lot of emotional scenes that are slightly undercut with humor that, while funny, wasn't necessary. And the villain Ghost is a very good villain. She's not amazing, she's above the average Marvel villain. But the problem is there is a secondary villain in this who, while needed to move the plot, is a little bit unbearable every time he comes on screen. But all in all, I think the movie is very solid. I think Marvel once again has nailed how you do a superhero movie. Make it serious enough, but also acknowledge your own flaws, be meta, and be funny. Be over the top and ridiculous in some ways. Because you're basing your comics off a guy whose ability is to talk to ants. It's hard to do something like that and be super serious about it. So it's better to go all the way and totally embrace the ridiculousness of this situation. And that's what Peyton Reed does. He knows how to do Ant-Man like James Gunn knows how to do Guardians of the Galaxy. You have to embrace the silliness of the character to fully have it work. I give Ant-Man and the Wasp 9 out of 10 Ant-Mans. If you in fact are also a human, you should subscribe to our channel. We love human viewers. Comment what you liked about the movie. Comment what you didn't like about the movie. We can talk about Paul Rudd. Talk about anything. I'm real lonely. I need something to do. Movie rants. Boosh.